It's fairly easy to find a bold-faced crossover. It's much more difficult to find one with the attributes to back up those aesthetics. The Santa Fe is the sensible premium two-row SUV in the brand's lineup, and it's priced as such, especially if you go with one of the electrified variants. Despite the large price spread, each one still comes with plenty of color-keyed panels and chrome accents, except for the XRT, a trim that gives you the appearance of having an interesting personality and hobbies. But you can still enjoy yourself and your activities with 8.2 inches of ground clearance. The overhangs will be the real limiting factor. This is more about the features. Like standard LED headlights and DRLs, there's also some tricks that are more fun than practical. It's also going to have things like proximity unlock and lock, some fancy chrome handles to add to that. 360 view camera is available, and a power rear gate is on everything except the base model. Which includes the 2.5 SEL I tested thanks to the friendly, knowledgeable folks at Royal on the Eastside in Bloomington, Indiana. You also have alloy wheels ranging from 18 to 20 inches, but to me, the front end looks like a luxurious catfish, but the rest of it seems understated. I would call the whole package upscale, but let me know what you guys think in the comment section. The interior matches the energy. I love the shape of the cabin. It's modern without going over the top, so I think it should age pretty well in most areas. It also has a premium yet practical choice of materials. Even on the base trim, you will still have some soft touch higher up on the dashboard, and this kind of fake carbon fiber trim, lots of matte finishes for the buttons. Step up further in equipment and it'll also add more soft touch materials lower down for where your knees will rest, and it really does help justify the higher price tag. Hell, even this one has a kind of cool headliner. It's just these details that make this feel thoughtful, along with a full set of physical buttons, tune dials, and controls for your HVAC. And on the surface, the tech does seem to be good, but Hyundai's execution and just bringing this all together falls short. Now, funny enough, I would much rather have the base 8-inch infotainment system setup for two reasons. One, the response time of the higher resolution 10.3-inch setup is subpar. It has a more convoluted user interface with smaller icons. It also comes with wired CarPlay and Android Auto only, whereas the base model actually has that wireless. I have zero clue why Hyundai does this, but overall, I'd hands down rather have this setup than what's in any new Subaru. And while the functionality isn't crazy, they do have a full digital gauge cluster that has a very high resolution and some fun animations. More importantly, the seats are excellent, especially in this high trim. It appears that even the base model actually does have lumbar adjustment combined with manual seats, but you'll get power adjustment everywhere else. And on your more loaded specs, you actually get a power adjustable extendo cushion, making thigh support for taller drivers no problem at all. I think these are nicely contoured as well, and they're plush. Even the headrests on my limited trim are pillow soft. If I had to nitpick, I would say that the elbow rest could be more plush. Feature-wise, you get a lot for what you pay for with the Hyundai. I've already mentioned the seats and the infotainment, but you do get a wireless charger there on the SEL. Cloth upholstery is standard, but you can opt for a synthetic leather, a real leather, or an extra real and rich Napa leather. A giant panoramic sunroof will come on many. You have ventilated front seats and a whole host of other stuff. The standard 6-speaker stereo provides an adequate experience. The optional Harman Kardon unit adds 6 more speakers, including a subwoofer, that make for a more powerful but not impressive audio system. Interestingly, my subwoofer was rattling after just 1,000 miles. When it comes to space, I am 6'3". The cabin up front is just wide enough for me to be comfortable. I do wish that the steering wheel could adjust out a little bit further, but I think a vast majority of people will have no qualms here. The storage is also pretty good, thanks to the drive-by-wire shifter with some nice feeling buttons that not everyone's going to love, though it opens up a generously sized pocket underneath. There's also a fairly deep center console, plus a little grippy shelf that sits above the passenger's knees, though nothing fits a 40-ounce hydro flask. With the front seat set in a comfortable yet not excessive position for myself, I have enough legroom, enough headroom, and really respectable support too. And you can recline them a nice amount. Plus the materials back here, you still have these fancy looking door handles and soft touch padding, though the lower trims admittedly look cheaper. Still, every single one is going to get rear console vents and USB ports.
Heated outboard seats and a traditional wall outlet come with the Limited.
If you're planning on punishing children with a knee-busting third row, the Hyundai Santa Fe will disappoint because it doesn't have one. Think roughly the size of a RAV4, and you do have a nice amount of under-seat storage. The plug-in hybrid doesn't reduce your capacity, and if you fold down the rear seats, it's quite flat. As an option, you can get some buttons to do that. On the road, the Santa Fe provides the handling and comfort of a well-designed sedan, though there are some hard-to-ignore faults. While Hyundai does make 4 different powertrains for the Santa Fe, most of them will be hooked up with a 2.5-liter naturally aspirated, direct and port fuel injected inline 4. And that's what I have here today. 191 horsepower, 181 pound-feet of torque, and it feels like that. But just like the Subaru Outback, a lot of people could not care less that it isn't quick. That said, let's see what the numbers say. Now keep in mind we're at a 3,000 foot density altitude, but 0 to 60 came up in 9.8 seconds. It's kind of slow. That's not great. You know, it doesn't feel lethargic,
But it will be stressed out in some situations. Passing power seems to be just enough for most affordable crossover driving styles.
I'd really advise going with either the hybrids or the turbocharged engine if you live at high elevation, though it doesn't feel as slow as the numbers suggest. Maybe that's because it has a traditional 8-speed automatic. The powertrain feels very natural and linear. When you're not in the sport mode, the transmission does take a second to respond to your inputs, but it does execute its shifts pretty smooth. Sometimes the transmission doesn't make the best decisions, especially if you're going up steep hills, but it tends to not lug the engine. Now, I've mentioned the turbocharged model that has 2.5 liters of displacement, and it makes a whole lot more torque, 311 pound-feet. 0 to 60 with that, I would probably expect to be around 3 seconds quicker. That's still going to run on regular fuel, and it's hooked up with an 8-speed automatic. Now, I've driven that powertrain in the Santa Cruz and was very impressed by the performance, especially passing power.
The 8-speed dual clutch could really romp through the gears while maintaining a smooth persona at the price of a notable hesitancy at low speeds. There was also a pretty widespread recall on that, which I will discuss later.
Due to some of the throttle tuning, pulling up to 65 miles per hour, it doesn't feel like I have to floor it to get there in a timely manner. Even here with the rain, this is very quiet. Maybe part of this is due to the SEL Premium and Up's acoustic front glass. This does also offer Hyundai's H-Track all-wheel drive system, which is pretty similar to what most are offering now. It'll max be able to send 50% of torque to the rear wheels. This is a front-wheel drive standard car, so it's front-wheel drive biased, and it utilizes various off-road modes that use the traction control system to redirect torque side to side. It does seem to work pretty well, but as usual, if you want the most capability out of a small crossover, Subaru's ability to send more torque to the rear wheels gives it an advantage, along with Honda's torque vectoring rear diffs and the Passport, which is a little bit bigger than this. Now for the hybrids. Under the hood of these, you will find a 1.6 liter direct injected turbocharged inline 4. In between the engine and the Trick 6-speed automatic that actually ditches the torque converter is a permanent magnet motor, providing either 60 horsepower or 90 horsepower if you get the plug-in hybrid, which has a net system output of a respectable 261 ponies. And that's what I'm driving now. Let's see what all of this does to the acceleration. Quite interesting. So it knew that traction was limited, so it immediately sent torque to the rear wheels. 0 to 60 came up in a modest 7.3 seconds, mainly because this weighs 4,500 pounds and the electric motor only has 90 peak horsepower. So much of the actual work needing to be done comes from the 1.6 liter turbo. And that story kind of carries through with the rest of the plug-in. There's no fast charging, and despite the high torque,
that low power output means that especially as the charge drops, if you just gently accelerate up a hill, the 1.6 turbo will wake up. Though your overall gas mileage will still be stellar, its weak electric motor and average range make it a worse EV than the Outlander or RAV4 plug-ins.
And the response that you get from the hybrid, especially at higher speeds, it really begins to rely on that turbocharged engine. At low speeds, you can really feel that electric torque.
It's relaxed. The turbo may provide the most potent performance, but the hybrid is reactive and more seamless at all speeds, making it feel like the most luxurious option. And unlike most of its hybrid competition, since the engine and the motor have to go through the 6-speed automatic, this has a traditional power delivery. Now let's hop back in the bulk selling 2.5.
Over an abysmal road, the standard 2.5 liter Santa Fe does a really good job. I mean, this is a compliant suspension. I do feel most of these imperfections, but it kind of glides over this stuff. Once you get over a lot of these repeated potholes and breaks in the pavement, it becomes a little less impressive, but still it's overall less harsh than what I found with the plug-in hybrid. Relative to two-row crossovers, the Santa Fe has accurate, natural steering. While it is numb, I like that the weight of the steering gives it some degree of substance. There's also not a whole lot of vagueness on center. This handles pretty well. Feels very controlled. Only going a little bit faster than I should, but wow, planted. Impressively dampened for this kind of vehicle. It is a little on the soft side,
but that tracks with the premium identity of the Santa Fe.
And I think this feels noticeably better than the plug-in hybrid, and that is for one big reason. Literally, because this weighs 4,500 pounds, the dampening is just a little bit worse. You feel the added weight. It's not nauseating. They did firm the ride up so that it still feels controlled. This overall does detract a little bit from the fun factor. Taking this on the same gnarly road, it is a little bit more stiff. The larger impacts do pronounce themselves more aggressively into the cabin, but it is still overall a smooth vehicle.
And for its size, it's easy to drive too, packing good visibility, a high seating position, standard blind spot monitoring, and available blind spot cameras that are well integrated into the gauge cluster.
Standard, this also does have Hyundai's Smart Cruise, which is touted as one of the better in the business. If you're looking to pull something with the Santa Fe, I would recommend the turbocharged model, which tows up to 3,500 pounds. Otherwise, you'll be limited to 2,000. Something that's rather disappointing is the gas mileage. It's a fair amount behind other naturally aspirated 4-cylinders in the segment. The hybrid is also less efficient and less powerful than what you'll find in the Toyota Venza, though I will say the plug-in model, when you're not using it as an EV, still gets respectable mileage. Reliability has never been Kia or Hyundai's forte, and they've long struggled with issues like oil consumption, but with the Theta 3 2.5 liter that you'll find in the Santa Fe, that seems to be addressed. And it also seems like Hyundai is looking at other problems like carbon buildup through adding port fuel injection on top of direct injection to keep the intake valves clean, though that doesn't come with the 1.6, and they've also strayed away from the dry dual clutch and implemented a wet dual clutch, but that has not fixed everything. In fact, they pretty quickly had, I believe, an oil pump issue, which caused many owners to experience a complete loss of power. There were also some stalling issues. A few people reported some electrical bugs, along with fragile glass, but not to the degree of some other products lately. After 2021, there was a steep drop-off in reported problems, so I wouldn't be scared to buy one,
especially when you consider the class-leading warranties.
I just don't feel confident enough yet to recommend this to someone who highly prioritizes reliability. For the money, there's a lot to love about the Santa Fe, but in some configurations, the appeal is very thin.
Specifically in its plug-in hybrid guise due to the compromises it makes on the road and as an EV, not to mention it no longer gets the tax credit. In 2.5 liter form, the Santa Fe is a strong competitor with a driver-focused approach to a crossover. The upmarket two-row segment carries some annoying trends, stuff like flashy standout styling while also being vague on the road. The interiors are often filled with glossy materials, capacitors, capacitive controls and are designed to grab attention at all costs, like a YouTube thumbnail. And they usually cost a ton when equipped the way you want them. There are some exceptions to this in the class, and one of them is the Santa Fe. It may have a bold look from some angles, but the interior is equally interesting and well designed. Outside of the fumbled infotainment, and on the road, it provides relatively natural, direct steering with a forgiving, controlled ride. Those are not easy things to accomplish simultaneously, helping the Santa Fe feel distinct. The gas mileage, the big slow screen, Hyundai's reliability history, and the middling PHEV aren't strong points. If you can look past that, the Santa Fe is a pleasant, fresh feeling crossover that won't destroy your financial future. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then leave a like to help me school the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe and hit the bell for more fun, detailed car content without fluff. Follow me on Patreon for an additional podcast, and I'll catch you in the next one.